Am I the antagonist for making my sister pay me back for shoes her dog pissed on? I, 27 years old male, love sneakers. I collect a bunch. My favorite pair to wear right now are the Travis Scott Reverse Mocha Jordan. One Lowe's valued at over $1,000. I think they are about $1,500 now. Anyways, we had a family get-together and we are an Asian household, so I take off my shoes and go upstairs and we are having a good time celebrating my other sister's birthday. When my wife and I go to leave, I put my shoe on and notice that it's soaked and smells like urine. I come to realize that my older sister's dog peed all over my shoe, granted somehow only one of them. I laughed in annoyance and said, well, now you gotta pay me back for these shoes he ruined. She said she would, but when I told her how much they cost, she immediately and angrily scowled back. No, that's ridiculous. I am not giving you $1,000 when you could just clean the shoes. I said, okay, fine, just pay me back half so I could go get them professionally cleaned or something. Compensation for your dog urinating on my shoes. She continued to refuse and started to say it was my fault for owning such expensive shoes. Then I got extremely upset because it's my money, I should be allowed to buy whatever I want, and these were shoes I saved up for. My mom offered to give me the $500 for her, but I told my mom to keep it, cause it should come from my sister, cause it was her fault. Here's where I may have been as an asshole. My sister did just have a baby, and I know how much of a financial burden babies are. However, she's refusing to take any blame now that she knows how expensive my shoes were, and honestly, that's what angers me more. So am I the asshole for asking my sister to pay me back for a pair of shoes her dog peed on? If someone's phone was chewed up by a random family member's dog, I doubt that people would be blaming the phone owner for not keeping track of their device. You should be able to reasonably expect that storing shoes in the designated space that shoes go would be safe. I think asking her to pay for a whole new set is a bit crazy, but not the antagonist. Just get them cleaned and bill that back to her. Am I the antagonist for telling my father I won't walk down the aisle just to make him happy? I, 33-year-old female, am getting married in a few months. I do not like receiving a lot of attention or being the sole focus. Birthdays, pictures, presentations at work. Whenever I'm the sole focus of something, I start to choke and get these ugly red splotches all over my chest and neck. We both love our families and would like to share with a small number of guests, but we also know our families would want full weddings and we'd never hear the end of it. We decided to do a small wedding with a very quick ceremony outdoors. We planned for a wedding that we could afford ourselves. Both of our families offered to help pay, and we declined just so there would be no strings attached. We told them if they really wanted to give us money to wait until the day of to make it a wedding gift. My parents kept insisting, and after talking with my fiancé, we agreed to take it early and just put it in our account. We aren't using any of it to pay for any portion of the wedding. I was at my parents' house this week going over some wedding stuff with my mom when my dad started to talk about how he couldn't wait to walk me down the aisle. I told him that there wasn't going to be an aisle to walk down. We are going to do semicircle seating with my bridesmaids and I coming out of our dressing tent from one side of the ceremony. At the same time, my fiancé and his groomsmen come out on the other. No walking in pairs or one at a time, no slow walks. They did not like this and told me that we need to fix the seating so he can walk me down the aisle, or I walk out by myself so he can walk me because he's always anticipated walking both me and my sister down the aisle. I told him no, but a father-daughter dance is doable while fiancé dances with his mom, or we can implement the unity candle where he hands me the candle instead. As it stands, no unity candle. I told him I'm open to other ideas to compromise on, but I'm not walking down an aisle just to make him happy, because I don't want to increase the chances of being all splotchy on my wedding day. I'm even encouraging our bridal party to make announcements during our wedding to avoid constant attention so that focus can be on others too. Some of my family has been reaching out to tell me I'm being selfish and disrespectful to my father after he's helped pay for the wedding. I've had to correct them that he isn't helping to pay. We're paying by ourselves and that I offered him alternatives, but aisle walking is completely off the table. My mother keeps telling me how disappointed she is in me. I don't think I'm being disrespectful and have offered good compromises, but I may be too close to the situation, so I have to ask, am I the a-hole? Your wedding should be about what you and your fiancé want, not what your parents have been dreaming of. It's great that you are standing your ground and doing it your own way. As an introvert myself, I fully support Team Elope. Your mother's disappointment conversations are hurtful, and she needs to understand that her words are not supportive or loving. Maybe have a sit-down conversation with her to express your feelings. As for your dad, maybe showing him a picture of what you would look like if you allowed him to walk you down the aisle could help him understand that his dream may not align with your reality. Wedding planning can be tough, but I wish you the best on your big day. Your happiness is what matters most. Am I the antagonist for getting upset because my BF made a, in my opinion, rude comment about my future living place? I, 30 female, and my boyfriend, 28 male, have been together for 3 years. I recently found an apartment that I liked, and as my parents sold their old house last year, they had some spare cash in the bank and decided to loan me the cash to buy the place so I wouldn't need to get bank financing. Just for context, my boyfriend had never shown any interest in my house hunting expedition. I never asked him why, but I assume he sees it as none of his businesses as it's not his money. I just started the purchase process, but the property isn't mine yet. A couple of days ago, I brought the topic of moving in up. For context, my boyfriend is not moving in with me, so he asked how long the sale process will take. I said because it's a cash purchase, it will not take as long as if I was getting a bank loan. He then joked about how nice it was to buy a EKCX value property in cash, but then said, I wouldn't do it. For context, I'm sure his parents could afford to do the same for him if they wanted to. He said that he would rather invest that cash elsewhere than to use it to buy a property as it would generate more returns, but it's totally fine if that's what my parents want. Today after lunch, I asked if we could swing by my future place to take a loop around the apartment complex, as I hadn't taken that route from that location before. My boyfriend has never seen the place. When we arrived, I showed him which apartment block it was, and he commented that it was so near the road, not supposed to be a good thing. That was his only comment about it. As we were leaving the area, I saw a billboard by the property developer which called the area the most coveted address in the country. I pointed it out in a half-mocking, skeptic tone. Not sure how to describe how I said it. While I did think it was a nice area, I did not think it was in fact the most coveted in town. My boyfriend then said, I don't want to live here. I told him that's not very nice and started to feel upset, so I went silent. After a while, he asked me whether I was okay, and I said I was upset. He asked why, and I told him that I felt he wasn't very supportive of my new place, and it was rude to make such a comment about my future living place. I also mentioned what he said about making the purchase in cash because the initial way he said it felt judgmental, even though he did have a good reason for not agreeing with the financial decision. He got quite angry, said it was just his opinion, and didn't know why I took it personally, and said, okay, I won't state my opinion anymore then. I said that you wouldn't go to someone's house, look around, and tell them that you wouldn't stay there, even if you did feel that way, because that's just objectively rude. He scoffed and challenged me to a bet by asking someone else if they thought the same. So, am I the a-hole for feeling what he said was rude and getting upset? Your instincts are completely correct. He was very rudely judgmental about finances and dismissive of a place you were excited to move into, showing a complete lack of respect. Makes me wonder what his level of respect is for you overall, if he even loves you at this point. His attitude was bratty and disrespectful, and getting angry when called out is a red flag. You shouldn't have to suck up to your significant other. They should be your best friend and not mock or insult you. He's the a-hole in this situation. Congratulations on becoming a new homeowner. Your boyfriend seems salty about you getting a head start from your parents, but he doesn't have money to invest in the house anyways. If he has concerns, he should talk to you like an adult instead of being immature. Am I the antagonist future mother-in-law overbearing after new baby? I, 32 years old female, had a baby back in August. It's my third baby, but it's with my boyfriend's, 33 years old male, first kid. This pregnancy was a complete surprise, but we welcomed it. His mother, 63 years old female, wasn't exactly supportive when we announced the pregnancy to both his parents, and instead only wanted to pester me about my ongoing divorce process and, when will you be divorced, so you guys can get married? Blah blah blah. I ended up leaving the announcement talk close to tears. My boyfriend did not stick up for me then, but when I told him it upset me, he ended up talking to his mom, but she never really apologized for it. Well, fast forward to August when my baby girl was born, and all of a sudden his mom wants to be a part of my life. She offered to come over every day after the baby was born. But after about 2 days, I told her she didn't have to come over. She is very much like a child herself, and she has a very judgmental, overbearing energy. But she still came over once a week. Now it's January and I am going through a hard time with the baby and everything else I do, but this woman still insists on coming over at least once a week while her son is at work. I started to tell my boyfriend that this was becoming overwhelming and she stresses me out too much to be coming over every week. Well, she was visiting, and I ended up snapping after a 3-hour-long visit when she was showing no signs of leaving. I asked her politely to leave because I had my fill of socialization. Well, she was offended, but she left. My boyfriend was not too happy with me for asking his mom to leave, but I reminded him that I told him I was getting overwhelmed with her and that I did plan on calmly explaining to her soon that I need boundaries. All the while his mom is blowing up his phone asking when she can come back over. Fast forward 2 weeks and I have a sit-down conversation with her at her house with my boyfriend present to witness. I explained how I've been feeling, told her that weekly visits weren't an option anymore and that she was being overbearing and that her visits aren't enjoyable to me because she's a passive, judgmental person who oversteps constantly. She said she'd stop being so overbearing and that she was sorry. Well, within 2 days she was back to texting me asking to come over. It was my son's birthday that weekend, so we said yes. Well, a day or two later she was asking me again to come over. I said no. She asked my boyfriend. He said no. She proceeded to bombard me 4 more times within 10 days to come over. I asked my boyfriend to take care of this since my attempt didn't work. He said he would. Well, 3 days pass and he didn't. So she texts me again, so I let her know that she has to stop in a very long text that my boyfriend was not happy about. It wasn't even a rude text, I was just reaffirming my boundaries. But now she's upset, she's crying to my boyfriend who is now upset with me. Am I the a-hole? I don't understand why the daughter-in-law who says no, don't come over, is always painted as the villain when it's the mother-in-law who is being overbearing, judgmental, and just generally unpleasant, thereby pushing her dill away. Set up a specific time she can spend with her grandchild, and how long, so she doesn't bombard you with requests. And think about making it a weekend where her son can deal with her. Parenting an infant is tiring and stressful enough. Mother-in-law acting like a child too is the last thing I'd want to deal with in your shoes. Recognizing it may be her first grandchild, and she's excited, your boyfriend still needs to have a conversation with his mom and lay some ground rules and overall be more supportive of you. I let my fiancé leave me without a fight, and I feel like I made a mistake. My partner and I were about to celebrate 2 years. He proposed around 5 months ago. I love him more than anything in the world, and I'm reeling from how everything just went down. We had a rough start to our relationship, and I won't go into too many specifics, but before we dated, we hooked up on and off for about a year before I was willing to settle down. He has always held a lot of resentment towards me for that. We had also experienced some other issues over time in terms of him not standing up for me to his family, me being too insecure, and other minor things along the way that often got blown up into more major problems. We have a lot of trouble communicating. I tried to push for couples therapy, and he said he didn't want to go because it would make him hate me more to relive all of the reasons he resents me. He said he wasn't anti-couples therapy, he was just anti-couples therapy with me. There's been fault on both sides. I'm going to sound biased because this is only my side, but I promise I have been in the wrong so many times too. Not recently. In the past year or so I have been a, mostly, perfect partner. I went to therapy and worked through a lot. I have certainly had slip-ups where I've fallen into old bad habits, but I have been deeply committed to making up for past mistakes and treating him like he deserved. But he still views me as the villain I was a long time ago and has never moved past our bad history. He left this weekend for a trip with his brothers, and the night before he left, we were sitting on the couch and I felt this overwhelming sense of dread and panic coming over me. It's time to put a deposit down on a wedding venue, and I was having trouble bringing myself to do it because I have felt like he was pulling away for a couple weeks. I started crying, and when he noticed and asked why, I told him, I'm feeling insecure in the relationship, and I don't know how many different ways I have to say it before you'll hear me. I feel like you want out and don't actually want to marry me. When I said that, I think a big part of me was looking for reassurance, but a bigger part knew I wasn't going to get it. He immediately lurched back and said, you know what, I am just going to be honest. I don't want to marry you. I don't see a future. I don't want to keep doing this. I'm not happy. When I leave this weekend, I'm not coming back. And he just totally let me have it. Unleashed a lot of things he'd clearly been holding in. He has left, tried to leave me before, and I have always put up such a fight and convinced him to stay. But something in me just said, stop fighting this, so when he was done, I told him, I'm not going to argue with you this time. You're not happy and I can't force you to be. If all of that is how you feel, you should leave me. The next morning, he packed what he needed for his trip, plus enough to get him through for a week or two of work, and he left. I have been filled with regret ever since. I don't know what to do or where to go from here. We live in a house that took both our salaries to qualify for to pay the rent, and I can't afford it alone. I have 3 animals. The dog we adopted together because he wanted him, so is actually our dog, but he was perfectly content leaving him behind. So finding a place isn't easy, and 8 months ago I moved to a city I'd never been to before, far from any family or friends, for him, because he wanted to come here. I have not made friends here and I have no one. I sold my old house and quit my old job to come here, so I can't just go back home now either. I'm stuck. I've always done very poorly with breakups, and this is the first time I've ever lived with anyone, and definitely the first time I'd ever followed a man for love, and the heartbreak is turned up volumes just from the pure loneliness and uncertainty. I just feel distraught and like I made a mistake letting him go without a fight. I feel like I should be begging for him to come home. But I also know deep down he is just going to leave again eventually, even if I convince him to come back now. The sunk cost fallacy is so real, and I'm terrified of starting over and especially of being financially insecure. But more than that, I love him dearly and I want to spend my life with him. I just don't know how to get him to finally move past the past, or if he even can. I miss him so much already and feel like my heart has been ripped out of my chest. Should I reach out and try to convince him to come home? Is there even a point? If you want to reach out only because of the sunk cost fallacy, then you definitely shouldn't. You are only 2 years in your relationship and it's been fraught with problems after problems. You are feeling anxious about putting the deposit down because this relationship is already troubled. You guys should not be getting married at all. You were right not to fight for this. The relationship has had many deep flaws since day one and needed to end. Frankly, I am amazed it lasted 2 years and got to the point of marriage. He is so clearly done here. There is no way you could keep him and you should not want to. What you should not have let go was your house. Am I the antagonist for abandoning my friend in a foreign country? So for context, I, 21 female, studied abroad in a foreign country, and I went through this organization, not my school directly, so nobody else but me was going from my university, and I knew no one there prior to arriving in the country. Once there I met a group of girls, including the girl in this story. Let's name her Marie. One night we were out clubbing and got super drunk and I quickly became very ill. I had extreme nausea, lightheadedness, and I could barely stand. I knew something was very wrong. I wanted to leave, but since I came with Marie, I asked her, "Do you want to go?" She said no. So I let a few minutes pass, but I was getting worse and worse, so I said to her again, "Hey, I think we should go back," to which she just looked at me without responding. I tried to stick it out, but we were in a line for another club, and I physically couldn't do it anymore. I turned to her and said multiple times over and over, "Let's just go. I don't feel well," or "Come on, let's go back. I feel like shit." Things along those lines. She kept telling me no, and said if I needed to go, I could. Once again, we were both drunk, and I hesitated because I didn't know how I felt about leaving her alone, but I was running out of options because at this point I was on the verge of passing out. I turned to my friends we had met up with, I met them through Twitter years ago, and asked them to keep an eye on her, and then told Marie I was gonna leave, and asked one more time if she was sure she didn't want to do with me, and she said, again, no. So I left, and when I got back I was very ill and constantly throwing up until I eventually fell asleep. I wake up to messages in our group chat from Marie saying she's still out and doesn't know where she is and feels sick. The girls had eventually found her and took her to the hospital by the time I woke up and read the message. I texted her asking if she was okay, but she read it with no response. Later in the day, Marie sends me angry messages berating me for leaving her alone and said anything could have happened to her and it's my fault. I was taken aback because at this point I had been to the hospital and was told I did indeed have alcohol poisoning. So I was wonky and out of it, but I felt extremely bad and apologized over and over. She then said she didn't want to be friends anymore, and I left the text at that. About 2 days later, I went to go meet with my Twitter friends, and they were appalled. They said, "You had alcohol poisoning, and you begged her to come back with you multiple times. She's a grown woman. Were you supposed you drag her by her hair by force to leave with you? She kept telling you no, and you left her with us. So she wasn't alone. It's not your fault. It's selfish of her to blame you when you were literally ill and couldn't stay out. So now I'm wondering, was I really at fault? I really did try to get her to come back with me, but she refused, so am I the asshole? Mate, you had alcohol poisoning and needed immediate attention. Any good friend would get you to safety ASAP if you started feeling unwell beyond just a bit too much. You didn't leave her alone. People were with her. She is tough for letting you go off by yourself unwell. Marie ditched you and had friends and support while you had to go to the hospital alone. You were inebriated to the point of nearly passing out but still had the sense to leave. She did not. You gave her the option to leave multiple times, but she chose not to. Lessons were hopefully learned. Feel better soon. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.